We're going to open up our Chumash today. We'll read a little bit inside. Welcome, everybody. So this week is Parshas Shalach. Shalach means, and he sent, to send. And the story of Shalach, the opening story of Shalach, is what we're going to focus on today. The story of Shalach is what happened basically was, in short, that the Jewish people were meant to go directly from Egypt to Sinai to receive the Torah. And then straight from Sinai, we were going to build, God had a plan for us to build a Mishkan. And then from there, go straight to Israel. We sinned with the golden calf. That started a whole process of breaking the tablets, asking for forgiveness, coming up for a second set of tablets coming down. It took us 6 months or so to build the Mishkan. Finally, we built the Mishkan. We inaugurated the Mishkan. Now we should have been ready to go, right? God promised us the land. Remember, God promised us the land flowing with milk and honey. God already promised to Abraham that this land is going to be your children's land. But right on the cusp of going into the land of Israel, the Jewish people turn to Moses and they say, maybe we could send some spies to check the land out. Let's see what it is that we're getting into over here. Moshe Rabbeinu is hesitant because, on the one hand, the Jewish people want to. On the other hand, God said we're going to get the land. So he brings their request to Almighty God, and Almighty God responds and says, I promised them the land. As far as I'm concerned, they don't need to go anywhere. If they insist, they want to go, do what you want. Tells Moses, it's up to you. It's your call. Moshe Rabbeinu decides to send 12 spies. One person from each tribe, a leader of each tribe. Moshe Rabbeinu decides to send. They come back. They spend 40 days going around the country. They come back to the desert and they tell the Jewish people their report and they say it's inconquerable. And the Jewish people go bananas. What'd you do to us? Should have gone back to Egypt. You're going to kill us in the desert. What's going on? God is very angry. And God wants to kill all the Jewish people right there in the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu intervenes. And God says, okay, a new plan. Instead of killing everybody now, we'll have 40 years in the desert. 1 year corresponding to 1 day that you went spying, and they spend 40 years in the desert. The next 39 years, actually, to be precise, because we're already 1 year into it, but God was kind of retroactively, 1 year worked retroactively. We spent the next 40 years traveling in the desert until we would be able to enter into the land of Israel. As for the spies themselves, they suffered an immediate death in the desert in front of everybody. So we'll read a little bit inside and we'll focus on a couple of ideas, a couple of very, I'll tell you, relax. Did I ever not tell you the page? I got to find the page for myself. It's always a first. Very well. This Simon is on a roll today.
Yeah, really?
Yep. Page 940 in our Chumash that we use over here. Page 940. That's where the parsha starts, and we're actually not going to start from page 940. But you can read the first verse. What does the first verse in page 940 say? Parsha Shlach.
Say not meant for yourself to float away to Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel. Said one man to each fraternal tribe, each one should be a leader among them.
Okay. That's the idea. And Moshe Rabbeinu sends 12 spies. We're going to focus on chapter 13, verse 25. Okay? Page 944. Chapter 13, verse 25 reads as follows. At the end of 40 days, they returned from scouting the land, right? You have it, everybody? Chavav 26. And they went.
They walked
And they came to Moshe and Aaron and the entire congregation of the children of Israel, Kadesh, in the desert of Paran. They brought them back a report, as well as to the entire congregation. And they showed them the land's fruit. They actually brought back with them a few fruits from the land of Israel. They reported to Moshe and said, "We came to the land to which you sent us. It is flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." Chof Ches 28. However, and this is the big however, the people who live in the land are powerful. The cities are huge and well fortified, and we even saw the children of a giant there. Amalek lives in the south of the land. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the mountains, and the Canaanites live both on the coast and alongside the Jordan. Kalef silenced the people to Moshe, and then he said, "We will definitely go up, we will take possession, for we are certainly capable of conquering it." But the men who went up with him said, "We are unable to go up against the people, for they are stronger than us." They produced a report about the land which they had explored, telling the children of Israel, "The land we passed through and explored is a land that consumes its inhabitants. All the people we saw in it are enormous men. We saw Nephilim giants there, supersized giants. From the Nephilim giants, we appeared like grasshoppers in our eyes, and that's how we were in their eyes." So this is the report, right? And as you can read further, after hearing this report, the Jewish people rebel against the plan, against Moshe and against Aaron, and they cry and they complain, and they do what, unfortunately, the Jewish people did a number of times. Okay. So we are going to focus on over here this report and the reaction to this report. Let's go back now that we read the report. Let's go back for a moment to what was their mission? What was their mission? Moshe Rabbeinu sends them with the mission. Let's go back to 942, verse 17. All right. Moses sent them to what? To explore the land of Canaan. He said to them, "Go up this way along the south border until you reach the sea, and then go up the mountain. See what kind of land it is. Are the people who inhabit it strong or weak? Are there a few of them or many? How is the land which they inhabit? Does it have good seasons or bad ones? How are the cities which they live? Are they unenclosed cities or in fortresses? What is the soil like? Is it fertile or barren? Are there any there who are like trees or not? Be courageous and take some of the land's fruit." It was the season when the first grapes ripened. So what was their mission? If you read this mission and you read the report, what was wrong? What's wrong with their report? In other words, obviously, we know from the end of the story, God is very angry. And as I mentioned earlier, God wants to annihilate the Jewish people in the desert, right there and then. But what is so wrong? In other words, the question we have over here is as follows. It's true, everything that they said. Was it not true that they were terrifying giants? No, it was true. That's what they saw, right? Was it not true that the cities were strong and fortified? Yes, it was true. So why were they punished so harshly? Why were the spies killed on the spot? What did they do that was so wrong and so terrible in the eyes of God?
They doubted him. God promised them Israel. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it.
But they also said that the people are stronger than us.
That's right, that's the big thing right there. Yeah.
Very good, very good. So hold the thought. If we look a little further, there was a group of Jews that came along and they said, God punished us, now we're not going to have to live in the land for 40 years. Guys, you're going to live in the desert for 40 years now? It's crazy. You know what we're going to do? We're going to go to Israel. We'll fight. We'll conquer the land. Moshe Rabbeinu told them, don't go. Don't go. It's not going to end well for you. Right? Text number, oh, you don't have to. Go to chapter 14, verse 42.
Do not go up because God is not among you.
Do not go up, for God is not among you, so that you will not be beaten by your enemies. For the Amalekites and the Canaanites are there before you, and you will fall by the sword. For you have turned away from God, and God will not be with you. So in other words, you see clearly from Moshe Rabbeinu, we agreed. Moshe Rabbeinu agreed with their report almost. And he told them, don't go up, because those guys are stronger than us. They are stronger than we are. And the proof is, a little while later, when people wanted to go up, he told them, don't go, because you're going to get killed there. So obviously, it wasn't that bad. Their strategy of the spies wasn't so bad. Don't go to war with these people. They're stronger than we are. Yet, we find that they were punished, and they were punished so harshly. Another question we have to ask is, in text, in verse 30, chapter 13, verse 30, what we read before. So what happened was 10 of the spies come back with this negative report, and 2 of the spies come back with a positive report. The 2 spies are Yehoshua, Joshua, would later succeed Moshe Rabbeinu, and Kalev ben Yefune, the leader of the tribe of Judah. Kalev offers a rebuttal. They come and they give their report. And in chapter 13, verse 30, we read, Vayahas Kalev esa'on el Moshe. Caleb silenced the people to hear about Moses. Vayomer, and he said, Oloi nala, we can surely go up. V'yarash noisam, we can take the land. We can take possession of it. V'yochel nuchala, for we can indeed overcome it. And then later on, a few verses later, chapter 14, verses 6, Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Yefune, who were among those who scouted the land, tore their clothes. Where they told the Jewish people as follows. The land that we just came back from scouting, it's a very, very good land. If God desires us, He will bring us to this land, and He will give it to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. However, don't rebel against God. And you will not fear as the people of the land. For they are like bread for us. Sor tzila me'alehem, their protection is removed from them. V'Hashem itanu, God is with us. Al tirom, do not fear them. So they tell the Jews, believe and be strong. God is with us. God is with us, right? Great. But what does that have to do with the argument that they made? The spies made. It's like it's like politics. They come in and tell you, we have a big problem over here. And instead of addressing the problem you have here, you start talking about something else. We're telling you that these people are stronger than us. I'm going to go to war with them. They're going to beat us. They're going to kill us. And you tell me back, what? Believe in God. Thank you. I appreciate it. But how are we going to handle this war? What are we going to do? Sounds good. What are we going to do? You didn't address the elephant in the room. We were sent on a mission. We come back and give a report. So instead of addressing the report, you tell me thank you for the report. You don't give a rebuttal to anything, not even one point that we mentioned, you're going to suggest that we were wrong. You were with us. So you agree with everything. Everyone should believe in God. But relax, believe in God. Thank you. So how do we make sense of all of this? And especially, as I said earlier, if Kalev and Yeshua couldn't even offer a rebuttal to their points, why were they punished so harshly? So the simple answer lies in the fact that people mentioned it earlier, but the main point is like this. Nowhere in the mission do we find that they were asked for their opinions on whether the land is conquerable or not. That was not part of their mission. Their mission was purely to go there, scout, come back, and tell us the lay of the land. We'll already decide what to do with the information. There are different, in the military, there are different groups, there are different people that have different roles to play. There's some people that their role is just to spy, to scout. Even in the Air Force itself, they have surveillance planes.
Gather intelligence.
They gather, that's only for surveillance. Surveillance planes are not bombers. It's not their role, it's not their mission. These people were the surveillance. That was their role. Come back and tell us exactly what's happening there. We'll already dissect that information that you come back, and we'll decide what to do with the information. That was the plan. And that's why nowhere did we find Moshe Rabbeinu asks them for their opinion when they went, not after, beforehand. He just said, go tell us, and he gave them exact instructions what to look out for. But they come back and they say, this land is terrible. It's horrible. It's a disaster. They're mighty. They're strong. It's inconquerable. We're on a suicide mission over here. And that was their mistake. Because God promised them the land. So by you saying that you can't get the land, so it's your word against God's word. God said, you're going to get the land. You're saying, well, it's impossible to get the land. That's your mistake. You are on a head-on collision with the word of Almighty God. And you come back to the Jewish people and you tell the people, don't listen to God. They all knew what God promised. He went to sleep for a day. He doesn't know what's going on in the land. We're telling you because we were there. We know what's happening over there. And we're telling you it's inconquerable. The Ramban Nachmanides explains, Moses asked them to scout out the land to see what type of land it is, whether it is lush or whether it's skimpy. So they came back and they said it's flowing with milk and honey. Great. Perfect. And Moses said to go out and scout land and report back whether it produces fruits or not. They brought back fruit with them and they said, this right here, this is the fruit that the land produces. That was also great. Everything that they were asked to do, they came back and they reported the truth. We have no problem with the report. They should have said, they should have said that regarding the strength of the inhabitants and the status of the fortified cities, because they had what to report on them. Because that's what Moshe Rabbeinu asked them to report on. He asked them these words: is it strong or is it weak? How do they live? What are the living conditions over there? So where was their sin? Their sin, however, was the additional word ephes. However. That word, however, was the beginning of their downfall. They said, however, based on this report, it's impossible to conquer the land. And that was the reason why they got punished. So it's not that the report was false, on the contrary. The report was true, 100% true, but their conclusion was wrong. You can have all the facts lined up and still have the wrong conclusion. And no one asked you for your opinion anyways. No one ever asked you to give your conclusions. You're out of your lane, your surveillance. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you for your report. We'll handle it from here. So this answers and explains on the simple level what the sin of the spies was. Now we'll take this a little further. We'll peel back one layer on this. And that is as follows. Why did they give a negative report? In other words, why did they come along and say it's incongruous?
They were afraid, I guess.
If no one asked you to say it, you knew your job was surveillance. So you come. In other words, what changed with them that they decided we're compelled, we're forced, we have to share this with you? This information we have to share with you. So there was a great Rebbe, his name was the Rebbe of Kotsk, Rebbe Nachum Mendel of Kotsk. He was very Kotsk Rebbe. He was very famous for his very sharp, very sharp. He lived in the early 1800s. Yes, in the late 1700s, early 1800s. He was a very brilliant man, and he was known for saying things very short, concise, and being very sharp. So he says as follows. He actually didn't write down, he wrote a lot of his thoughts down, but before he died, he said they should burn everything. So the teachings that we have from him are basically teachings that his students had written down. So there's a book called Emes Meikotz Titzmach, which is a play in the words. There's a verse in Psalms, Emes Me'eres Titzmach, truth sprouts forth from the ground. But they wrote Emes Meikotz Titzmach, truth from Kotsk sprouts forth. That was the title of the book that's written. So he writes like this: Esataina, the claim, when the spies came back, to read the words are very important. The words are critical over here. They said something about how they were feeling when they were there. How did they describe their feeling when they were there? You remember?
They felt like grasshoppers.
Oh, very good. They said, right? Where is that in the verse?
We look like grasshoppers.
33. In verse 33, they said, we appeared like grasshoppers in our eyes, and that's how we were in their eyes. So the Rebbe of Kotsk says like this: the claim that in our eyes we look like grasshoppers is understandable. But the claim, and so we were in their eyes, is part of the spy's sin. For what difference does it make how someone else views you? Who cares? What are you telling them how they perceive you to be? In Yiddish, we would say, "Was ist nageh?" Why is that relevant? Who cares? Why is it important? Why is it even taking up any brain space by you? To think about and to worry about what this Canaanite and this Amalekite and this person over there thinks about me? Who could care less what they? I don't care what you think of. That's what their attitude should have been like that. So therefore, the Kotzker Rebbe says the fact that they saw themselves as grasshoppers in the eyes of the giants, no, they were giants. They really were giants, and they felt like grasshoppers. You're sharing your feelings. But what's most troubling is, and so we were in their eyes. And this is a very important lesson for life. For we all know that there are things that we should be doing and we can be doing. And many times what's holding us back from doing it is the fear of what someone else is going to think about doing. How are they going to proceed? How are they going to take it? I know I should be doing this mitzvah. I know I could be doing that mitzvah or something else. And I'm worried about what's my spouse, what's my friend, what's my parent, what's my sibling, what's my neighbor, and my fellow, my colleagues, my employer. What are they going to, how are they going to feel about this? And because of that, we stop. We stop what we're going to do. We stop doing that which we know to be a good thing. And this holds us back from living out our real and true potential. So the lesson we have to take from this spies is that while it may be true or it may not be true that we are grasshoppers in their eyes, that we perceive ourselves as grasshoppers in their eyes, that should not affect what I need to do. I have to do what I know is right. What God asks of me, that's what I need to do. However, someone else is going to take it, that's their issue, that's their problem, it's not going to be mine. So this is one thing that we can take and learn from this. The lack of concern for public opinion really works in two ways. It shouldn't prevent us from doing something positive, nor should it be on our minds when doing that positive thing. I don't take into account what you think about what I'm doing, both if it's going to be a negative one or if it's going to be a positive one. For example, imagine I'm in a public space. I don't know. I'm on a train, I'm on a plane, I'm in the airport. I don't know, you name it, doesn't matter. And it's time to daven, time to put on tefillin. So one person that's going to say, I'm going to be uncomfortable to put on my tefillin here. Why? Why is it going to bother me to put on tefillin over here? Because I'm worried, why do they have all these non-Jews that are all around? It's a public place. What are they going to think is happening? It's going to be strange for them. They're not going to understand. And I come all the reasons why I'm not going to put on my tefillin now. That's terrible. But then there's another side to it. Another side to it is, I want everybody to see how I put on tefillin in the public space, how great and holy I am, how I don't care about anything. Things. You know, it's like you put up a sign, a t-shirt, I don't care about what you think. That's why it's on your shirt, because you don't care about it, right? The more you talk about it, you want it to be on people's minds. You want yourself and your behavior to be the subject, so you do really care about what they think. And that's why you want them to have a good impression of you. You want them to see how holy and how righteous you are, right? So you get up to daven. We get up to daven now. What I want to see how intensely focused I am on my prayers and how long I can pray for and how loud I can say my prayers and how well I can read Hebrew, whatever it is, right? It's terrible. Why? Because it's worried about, it's thinking about
the prestige and status,
the perception of that somebody else has of me. Therefore, we find something brilliant. That the Baal Shem Tov had a student. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polonia. One of the greatest students of the Baal Shem Tov. He wrote a book called the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. And he writes, when it came to Sinai, when the Jewish people were at Sinai, God told Moses to go up the mountain. And he told him, V'ish lo ya'aleh imoch, and no man shall go up with you. No one can go up with you. So in those words, V'ish lo ya'aleh imoch, and no one can go up with you. So he explains, the student of the Baal Shem Tov, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, explains as follows. He says, this means that when one prays, he should imagine himself alone before God, with no other person with him in front of whom to boast. Similarly, when one learns Torah, he should study as if he is alone before God. The same applies to being kind to another. When he gives charity, he should imagine himself alone before God and not be doing it for self-aggrandizement. Don't think about other people and their perception of me, both for the negative, if it's going to be a bad perception of me, and the same thing applies for the good, not for the attention that it's going to garner. Both of them are bad. No man shall go up with you. When you're doing something right, it should be only you. Focus on me and God right now. That's what I'm studying, I'm learning, I'm helping, I'm donating. It's me and God over here. So this was the mistake of the spies that they took into account. And because they took into account what others thought about them, that's why they came back and they said, we can't conquer the land, it's inconquerable. Now, the Kotzker Rebbe, interesting, if you ever heard in Israel today, if you go to Jerusalem, the largest Hasidic group in Jerusalem is called Gur, or Ger.
Yeah.
From Poland, they're from Poland, Polish Hasidim. The Ger dynasty is really a child of the Kotzk. The Kotzker Rebbe, his student, was the first Ger Rebbe, who is known as the fiduciary for the book that he wrote. And he had a son. His son's name was Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib Alter. And he wrote a book called the Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes, one of the brilliant Rebbe. So he's like the spiritual grandson of the Kotzker Rebbe. The spiritual grandson of the Kotzker Rebbe was the second Ger Rebbe. And in his book called the Sfas Emes, on Bamidbar, he writes like this. Nira, it seems, Hapirush, the explanation is as follows. Because they felt, they meaning the spies, because the spies felt, in our eyes we seemed like grasshoppers. Therefore, that's the way we were in their eyes. This is what the Midrash says. That if the Jewish people had believed in God, they would have appeared as angels. It was due to their lack of faith alone that they were seen as lowly in the eyes of the Canaanites. In other words, what the Sfas Emes, what the second Rebbe of Gur is teaching us, he extends what his spiritual grandfather, the Rebbe of Kotzker, he goes a little bit different and gives a little bit background. Further, take it a level further, a level deeper. Where did it come from that we should care? In other words, the perception was reality. Why were we perceived as such? They were giants and we were grasshoppers. They were huge and we were tiny. Why did they perceive us as tiny? Oh, that's what he says. The reason is because that's the way we viewed ourselves. Had we viewed ourselves as strong and mighty, as angels, as on a mission of God, they too would have seen this. They too would have seen that in us. They would have said, wow, look who goes there. Some type of angelic figure, some type of mighty creature that we've never seen before. But because we had an inferiority complex, because we ourselves felt inferior to them, therefore they looked at us and they sensed it in one moment. They said, these guys are nobodies. These guys are grasshoppers. These guys are cockroaches. So one led to the other. How does it start? It starts with what's going on in your mind. Your mind is actually what's going to create the image in somebody else's mind. And this is where the whole thing started from. How did we end up with them coming back and saying that the land is inconquerable? Because when they went to Israel, to tour, to spy, to scout, and they saw big people, all of a sudden, internally they crumbled. They became fearful and they crumbled and they viewed themselves as nobody, as grasshoppers. So automatically, that's the way they were perceived. I told you this guy's story a number of times. When the Alter Rebbe, when Napoleon was at war with Russia, Napoleon was marching and he was conquering land. There was a huge war and a huge battle. There was a big split among the Rebbes of the time, among Jewish leadership at the time. Who should we support, Napoleon or the Tsar? And the Alter Rebbe supported the Tsar. And all of his colleagues supported Napoleon because they felt that Napoleon wins is going to be better for the Jews. The Alter Rebbe said that may be better physically, but spiritually it's going to kill us. And therefore, we'll handle the physical pressures if we and we'll be able to hold on to ourselves spiritually. So the Alter Rebbe wasn't only siding with the Tsar, but he actually was helping the Tsar's efforts to win the war. And the Alter Rebbe had a chassid who was a translator, very good in languages. He was translator for Napoleon, and he would send back reports of what the French army was up to, what they were planning, etc. And based on those reports, the Tsar was able to already preempt the strikes and be there beforehand and take care of what they needed to take care of. And the French army realized that they have a spy in their midst, because it was impossible for the Russians to know this information, not a spy. Napoleon was known to be a Meshuggah. He was a madman. And he was part of one group, one battalion, this chassid. And Napoleon walked in unexpected. He walked into this group wherever they were stationed, and he sees this chassid. It didn't look like a French armyman.
Yeah.
So he goes over to him, and he said, "You're a spy." And he takes his hand and he put it on his heart. He said, "You're a spy," and he put his hand on his heart to feel his heartbeat. And the chassid later reported and he said that at that moment, in that second, when Napoleon walked in, he put his hand on my heart, I had to put it to use. All of the teachings that I spent all the years studying by the Alter Rebbe, with the Alter Rebbe taught us in Tanya. The most basic teaching of Tanya teaches us that in a human being, the mind can control the heart. That's the advantage that a human has over any other creation, that our mind is possible to control the heart. He said to put it to use right then and there. I had to control my heartbeat. So he literally controlled his heartbeat. But what was the idea? Why am I? And Napoleon took his hand off, and he was spared because his heart rate remained the same. This was the teachings of Chassidus' practical application for if you're a spy. But that's not what it was written for. It just could be used for that too. Why did I say this now?
It's the persecution of the polygraph.
Yeah, exactly. The original one, the earliest form. Why do I say this now? Because it's all in your own mind.
Yeah.
You control the narrative. It's up to you. So what happened was when the spies lost control, when they saw them, they became for a moment fearful. They viewed themselves as grasshoppers, and therefore that's the way they were perceived. That's why they come back and they said that the land is inconquerable. So obviously this teaches us a further lesson that we have to learn from the spies. So many walk around intimidated. People are intimidated by their boss, they're intimidated by their friends, they're intimidated by classmates, they're intimidated by coworkers. Why are they intimidated? Why is anyone ever intimidated from somebody else? Because you perceive them to be bigger, better, stronger, more creative, faster, more talented, and more capable than I am. So in your presence, they felt a little bit or a lot inferior. Yeah? But the truth is that it's nonsense. It's all in our mind. If we allow ourselves to be trampled upon, we're going to be trampled upon. If we give off the impression that we're weaklings, so we're going to be dealt with and treated like weaklings. if we give the impression that we're strong and we're fearless, that's the way we're going to be treated. And the Rebbe would say this all the time when it came to Israel. When it came to Israel and being pressured by the foreign governments to return land and to make peace treaties and peace deals, etc., 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 throughout the years from 1948 onward, the Rebbe would always stress how that the government in Israel has to stand strong, and that's the only way they're going to be respected. Don't think that through concessions you will ever be respected. On the contrary, the more you concede, the more they're going to want. It's going to be a never-ending cycle. Why? Because they'll see that you're weak and you don't have convictions. And therefore, in 3 years, they'll pull your right hand, and in 5 years, it will be your left hand. You'll be left with nothing. Stand strong. The Rebbe would always say, don't give in to the pressures. It doesn't matter who it's from. It could be the United Nations, it could be the United States, it can be everyone. Stand strong, and you'll see that ultimately, they're going to respect you. Not only won't they view you as being inferior, but they will see something special and strong within you, and that's the way they're going to treat you. They'll treat you like an equal. They won't treat you like a pawn. They won't treat you like a grasshopper. So this is something that we saw throughout the years in many, 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 many different cases, and unfortunately, the Israeli government did not listen to this advice for many years, and unfortunately, that's why every few years, no matter of the concessions that we made, they always want more and more and more and more. It's never enough. It was never enough. It's never going to be enough. And the Rebbe would even say, don't even enter into peace talks about concessions. Peace talks are fine. Not about concession. The moment you enter into the peace talk and the concession is on the table, you're already lost. Because you already show that it's negotiable. Once you even entertain the idea that it's negotiable, you're already lost the negotiation. It shouldn't be, and we see this today. What was it? The Abraham Accord 2-3 years ago, Israel made peace with countries that they didn't have peace with, and they didn't have to make any concessions. They have to give up anything. Peace for peace, as they call it. Peace for peace is always good. We always love peace for peace. Peace for my house, no thank you. That we don't accept. Not don't accept. Not even talk. It's not a negotiation. There's no room for negotiation. We're not talking about it. That's the attitude that we have to have. You have to have the attitude of strength. So now we have to get to what's the response. We know the problem. The problem we got. The spies had an inferiority complex. And therefore, that's the way they were perceived by the local inhabitants as well. That's why they came back with a bad report, and they said it's inconquerable. So what does Kalev and Yeshua, the two spies that remained faithful, what was their response? What did they say to counter their argument? We get your argument. Your argument is you're weak, and they think and they feel that we're weak. So they come back and they say, in chapter 14, verse 9, something very interesting. When you read it, you don't necessarily understand it this way. Chapter 14, verse 9. Yeah. They said what? However, where's in the English here? You see where it says Moshe pray? No, sorry, before that. Verse 9.
Do not rebel against
Do not rebel against God. And then you will not fear the people of the land. So this translation over here is not the literal translation. This is Rashi. The literal translation is as follows. However, don't rebel against God. And don't fear the inhabitants of the land. Don't rebel against God. and don't fear the inhabitants of the land. It seems to be, when you read the verse, like it's two separate things. Don't rebel, don't be afraid. But Rashi points out, Rashi says, Al timroidu, don't rebel, vishuv atem l'tiron, consequently you will not fear. That's why he translates here, and then you will not fear. Rashi learns, if you believe in God, if you don't rebel against God, then you will not fear. Rashi in these words is explaining to us how this verse, this statement is actually a rebuttal against the word of the spies. Where does one get the strength from? Where does a Jew get the strength from? Not to be intimidated, not to feel inferior, not to worry about Ma yomu hagoyim, what will the nations think? What are my non-Jewish colleagues and friends going to think? What are my neighbors? We're a minority here. What do I have to take into consideration, all of this? And if I do take that in consideration, I'm weak. I'm outnumbered. I'm outflanked. Says Kolev and Yeshua, if you don't rebel against God, you have nothing to fear. In other words, they never said that the spies were incorrect in their assessment of the Canaanite strength. They never made that counterclaim. They agreed that the cities were fortified and the enemy was a very formidable enemy, to say the least. And they even acknowledged that, naturally speaking, it didn't look good. But it doesn't matter. Why does it not matter? Because our mission to Israel is a mission of God. It's a godly mission. And as long as you are on a godly mission, you have godly strength to fulfill your mission. It's as simple as that. If you're on your own mission, if you're on doing your own thing, so then you have to take into calculation this and that, and you're probably going to say, don't. It's inconquerable. But the mission to begin with was always a godly mission. We didn't come up on our own with this idea to go to the land of Canaan and conquer the land of Canaan, and that was going to be our homeland. We didn't make this up. We didn't choose that land from all the lands of the earth. God chose the land. God promised us the land. God said you're going to go to the land and conquer the land and drive out these mighty giants and fortified cities. We walk with God's strength here. We're on God's mission. And so long as we're on God's mission, we have nothing to fear. If you have God with you on your mission, so then consequently you're not going to fear. A result of my attachment to God, that causes me to be fearless. So where does one get confidence and strength? The answer is to examine what it is that you're doing. If what you're doing is the right thing to do, that means it's the godly thing to do. And perforce, you're going to have everything that you need to fulfill the mission that you're given. But if what I am about to engage in right now is perhaps not the right thing to do, so then you're on your own. Proceed with caution. And the Rebbe wrote many different letters to many different places, this idea to many different people. And I quote for you all the time what the former chief rabbi, Lord Jonathan Sachs, famously would say, Alav Shalom would famously say, the non-Jews respect Jews who respect Judaism. And non-Jews are embarrassed by Jews who are embarrassed by Judaism. It sums up the problem with the spies in a nutshell. If they were afraid, they were embarrassed, that's the way they were perceived. If they would come with confidence in their mission, they would walk with pride. If they would know that God is walking with us on our mission right now, So then the non-Jews would have respected them. They would have bowed down to them. They would have treated them like angels. In the verse, the Rebbe would always say concerning the land of Israel, it says, the nations of the world will see that the name of God is upon you and they will fear you. The Gemara says this, what does it mean the name of God is on you? This refers to the tefillin on the head. When you put on the tefillin on your head, this is a sign of putting God's sign, God's name on my forehead, on my head, a crown for everybody to see. This is who I am. That's walking with God. And then automatically what happens is it instills fear in the enemy. If there is an enemy, if there's someone that wants to cause harm, someone that's trying to instill fear and to terrorize, tefillin is the antidote. Tefillin is the name of God that I put on my head. And that's why the Rebbe started the campaign in 1967 before the Six-Day War. The mitzvah tefillin, with that Chabad now stands on all the streets and all asks Jews to put on tefillin. All started in 1967, started in Israel. The soldiers, the Israeli soldiers should put on tefillin. They're the ones on the front line. They're the ones that have to be confident. They're the ones that the enemy has to be afraid of. That happens with a Jew through putting on tefillin, the Rebbe would say. And I'll conclude with a fascinating idea, a really fascinating idea. The spy said we were like grasshoppers, right? You remember the grasshoppers? We're talking about grasshoppers. Rashi says something very, very strange, extremely strange. And all the commentaries are puzzled by Rashi. Rashi writes as follows. The verse that says that we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. It's verse 33. The last words of the verse says, and so we were in their eyes, right? Again, what's the sentence? How does it go? We appeared like grasshoppers we appeared like grasshoppers in our eyes, and that's how we were in their eyes, right? You got it? Rashi says something fascinating on the words "v'chein hayinu beinehem," and that's how we were in their eyes. Shamaynu aimrim. We heard them saying zelazeh. We overheard conversations. The spy said. One person was saying to another, "Nimolim yesh bikrovim ka'anoshim." We have ants walking around over here, like people. And all the commentaries, ants. They said grasshoppers. Why did he change from the word of the verse? They said grasshoppers. What is he saying? Ants. Very, very strange. We were like grasshoppers in their eyes. What's the proof? Because we heard them talking to each other and describing us like ants. Well, then you should have said we were like ants in their eyes, not grasshoppers, right? Why? It's like, it's so blatant. You're changing the word of the verse, Rashi. It seems to be very strange. So there's, in Proverbs, in Mishlei, in chapter 6, verse 6, the verse says as follows. Lech el namon. King Solomon says, go to the ant. Otzel, you sluggard. Re'ei diracheha, see her ways, v'chacham, and become wise. Asher ein lo kotzin shoiter moishel, for she has no chief, overseer, or ruler. Pochin bakayetz, yet she prepares her bread in the summer. Lachmo. Ogra bakotzin machola, she gathers her food in the harvest. In the simple understanding, Solomon, King Shlomo, is saying in Proverbs how great the ant is. He's telling, go look at the ant and see how hardworking she is, how hard she plugs away at her tasks, despite the fact that she has no boss and no one forcing her, no one telling her what to do, etc., etc., etc. She works hard to gather her food and to take care of herself and the family, etc., etc. There's so much to learn from the ant. That's what Solomon says. But Rabbi Lev Yitzchak of Berditchev draws from these verses a different theme of the ant's character. And based on this novel teaching of Rabbi Lev Yitzchak of Berditchev, he explains Rashi's words. He says like this. Rashi is hinting to the fact that the spies were like ants. What is the description of the ant that Solomon gives? She has no chief, overseer, or ruler. The spies also felt like we have no chief, overseer, and ruler. They felt it, and they behaved godless. And because of that, that's what Rashi is hinting. It's a little change of word, but it's a hint. It's a hint to give us a little bit of depth into really what was going on over here. It touches on the core of the sin, the core of the problem of the spies over here. That they said, we have no ruler, we have no overseer, we have no chief. We're on our own. You're on your own, everything falls away. You're right, they're stronger, they're more. There's 31 kings, we're just a small little nation, and that's it. Had they not used the ant-like mentality and outlook in life, they would have never felt like they have no ruler. They would have felt like God is with us. They're mighty, but we have God. They're fortified, and we have God. Whatever it is, that their fruit, everything seems weird, but you know what? It is what it is. God's going to have to make this one happen. I don't know, God, this one's on you. I got no idea how this is going to work. It seems to me very complicated, but you'll have to come up with a good one. So this is the way Rabbi Lev Yitzchak of Berditchev explains the fascinating change in word, terminology that Rashi uses of ant instead of grasshopper. So the takeaway we have to have from this important lesson tonight is that we really can all find in our own life, there's definitely room for us to grow in hearing about what other people think of us and taking it further to always focus solely on God, whether for the good or for the bad, not for the good attention or being afraid of the bad attention. And even more than that, to always walk with confidence. Because we're worried sometimes, we do feel a little bit intimidated. There are situations in life where we do feel intimidated. And if we are feeling intimidated, we have to remember it's because we're not walking with God. So you have to think for a moment. The mission that I'm on right now, what am I about to do right now? Is it the right thing to do? If it's the right thing to do, remember, God is with me. I have control of the situation. There's nothing to fear. Al tiro mi pachad pisan. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. Not like an ant. This is what Yehoshua and Kalev taught us. So the way to rid ourselves of our insecurities is to fortify our strength and our belief in Hashem. The more we feel connected with God, the less insecure we're going to be. If we find ourselves being insecure, trace it back. Go back to where we find it. And as the story of Alter Rebbe, the mind controls the heart. So if we're having feelings of being uncomfortable, being intimidated, and being scared maybe, and worried, and all these things, because we're not focused with our mind, we're not focusing on the truth, on what we're supposed to be focusing on. We're getting caught away and allowing ourselves to be caught away with other things. So never allow your own insecurities to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because that's what it's going to be. Be strong, chazak, v'nis chazek. All right, anyone have any questions on today's lesson? Brilliant.
Yes,